Hello, everyone, and welcome to this UCL Connect event, How Building a Personal Brand Will Boost Your Professional Profile in 2024. My name is Lisa Yasamides, and I work in the Alumni Relations team at UCL. I'm very excited to be a part of this event and really looking forward to hearing from our guest speaker today. For those of you who don't know about the UCL Connect event series, this is one part of the series which looks at improving the professional development skills and expertise of alumni and students across the global UCL community. Whether you're established in your career, moving into a new industry, or considering your options post-graduation, the UCL Connect series has something for everyone. The programme is a mix of virtual and in-person events, which are run around once a month during term time. Next slide, please. On the screen are examples of a few of the previous sessions we have run. If you do wish to rewatch any of these sessions, please do follow the URL listed. Next slide, please. Before we begin the event, I just want to let everyone know that this event is being recorded. There will be an opportunity to ask some questions to our speaker, and you can do this by writing your questions in the Q&A section, which you should see at the bottom of your screen. Please put your questions in here at any point during the session, and those questions which get upvoted will be answered first. For those of you who are not aware, there is also the option to bring up live captions on your screen. These need to be individually turned on. So if you would like to use this feature, you will see a button that has 3 dots and the word more at the bottom of your screen. Click that button, then click captions, followed by the option that says show captions, and this will enable that feature for you. Next slide, please. So up on the screen is what to expect from today's session. We'll begin with some introductions in just a moment, followed by the presentation, and then wrap up the event with an opportunity for the audience to ask questions at the end. So I'm very delighted to welcome today's speaker, Georgina Rutherford, co-founder of Personally. Thank you so much for joining us, Georgina, and welcome back to UCL. It's great to have you here with us today. I'm going to hand over to you now to begin your presentation. Thank you ever so much.
Thank you very much, Lisa, for the introduction. I'm just going to start sharing my screen. Everyone can give me a second. All right. Hello to everyone, and thank you so much for taking the time to join me today. I hope you're all comfortable. Sit down, grab a coffee, and we'll get started. I heard that there was around 350 people that signed up for this today, so that's incredible. And I think it's a massive testament to how important the personal brand is, how relevant it is. And my goal with this session is to give you, I just want you to be able to leave this session with something that you can apply today, tomorrow, to start building your personal brand, and that you'll hopefully see results from straight away. As Lisa mentioned, I'm going to do a presentation. It's around sort of 40 minutes, and then we're going to jump into some Q&A. So make sure you write down your questions in the Q&A function. But a little bit of an introduction to me. My name's Georgina, and I'm from the UK originally. I was born in Sunderland in the north, and I moved over to the Netherlands, where I'm based now, in 2002 with my family. This is everyone on screen, so me and my brother and my parents. This is us in Amsterdam, very scenic photo. And we moved over here as expats. We were only meant to be here for a year and then ended up staying more than 22 years. So as you can imagine, I thoroughly enjoyed growing up here. And so I live in Amsterdam. My office where I'm sat in now is in Haarlem, which is just outside of Amsterdam. But I'll tell you a little bit more about my company and the office that I'm in and everything else as we move along. But obviously the reason why I'm here today is because I am a UCL alumni. As Lisa already mentioned, I graduated in 2014 with a BA in English. The appeal to me for UCL was the fact that I went to an international school in the Netherlands. So UCL being an international university, it was a great match for me. Thoroughly enjoyed it. And when I graduated, I headed back to Amsterdam to see family, to figure out what I wanted to do. And that's when I kind of sort of fell into work experience straight away. And this is a bit of background into what I got up to. I wanted to use my love for writing. Obviously, I just finished a BA in English, and I don't know how many of you in this session did a BA in English, but the 6-hour Shakespeare exam is something I'll never forget. But I still loved writing after the experience. And I started working for a few agencies and brands in Amsterdam. Amsterdam's very much, if you've not been here, very much a sort of European hub for agencies, brands, especially in the digital tech space. So I picked up a few projects in PR and marketing and copywriting. And then it was actually in my sort of the last one I'm showing here, the last example, a company called IMA, in which I had my first experience in personal branding. And back then it wasn't called personal branding, but I'll explain a little bit more. So my responsibility while I worked for this company, it was called IMA, the Influencer Marketing Agency, was to market the agency itself. So I wasn't on the client side, I wasn't on the project side. I was very much involved in how are we going to sort of position ourselves in the market. And one of my responsibilities was the founder profile. So we had 3 female founders. And at the time, it was always a sort of smaller part of a bigger strategy. And I'll get into what I mean by that a little bit later. But I was doing things like ghostwriting for their LinkedIn. I was ghostwriting articles for them for the likes of Forbes and entrepreneur.com. I was getting them on stage, helping pitch them for interviews, radio, TV, etc. It was always a sort of between layer in the marketing mix. It was never sort of as important as, let's say, our own social channels or our own website. But that was sort of the first time that that a founder strategy, and I'm going to call it that, a founder strategy, came to the fore in the marketing that I was doing. And it kind of sparked my interest. And that's when I came up with it was the first time that I thought about what personal branding could be, and actually how much I enjoyed working with founders and executives and professionals on helping them crystallize their vision, get it on paper, and get it out there, which is actually the premise of the business that I launched in 2023 called Personally. And Personally, we're a personal branding agency. And in this slide, you'll see my co-founders, Micah and David. And we basically we started Personally around something, and a piece of experience that I had as a freelancer. After I worked for IMA, I went and worked for myself, started freelancing, and one of my first jobs was for a young digital agency in Amsterdam. And they asked me, can you work on our marketing strategy for next year? And we want a pretty big chunk of that to be focused on the LinkedIn of our founder. So very much a founder strategy, as I mentioned. And for me, this was the first time it was sort of very much at the fore. I was working on it a few days a week. And they told me, look, quite a big portion of our leads come through the founder's LinkedIn. And for me, that was a light bulb moment. I thought, wow, this is so interesting that people aren't thinking about how to leverage a founder and how to leverage something like LinkedIn as a sort of core part of a marketing strategy, something that actually yields results. So in summary, what we do at Personally is we help founders, mostly founders, CEOs and entrepreneurs. We help position them in their industry to help them grow their business, to help them achieve their goals. And we do that through a number of activities, things like creating content, getting them on stage, getting them on podcasts, producing podcasts. And yes, this is it's a new space, but it's something that I thoroughly enjoy, and being able to work with incredible entrepreneurs every day is a blessing. But the reason why we're here today is obviously it's connected to what I do, and that is the personal brand. I know obviously you've heard me talk about founders, you've heard me talk about CEOs, and a lot of you are either still studying or perhaps you have a completely different career. But the good news is that everyone has a personal brand. It's about what you do in shaping it, or what you don't do in shaping it. But the most important thing is to realize that everyone can have a personal brand. It doesn't matter what industry you're in, and everyone can work at building their personal brand. It's very much a myth, and this is something I hear even from my clients, that personal branding is only for influencers or celebrities. That's absolutely not the case. I hear it quite often from clients. They come to me and they say, I know that I need to be more visible. I know that I need to have a digital footprint as a founder, but I don't want to be the next TikToker. I don't want to be a vlogger. My answer is always the same. You don't have to be. The great thing about personal branding is it's about a custom approach for you. There's a wide range of channels you can use and leverage, but it's about finding the right mix for you, the right mix for your industry, the right mix for your role, and most importantly, the goals that you have as an individual. Why does personal branding work? Fact of the matter is, people buy from people. This is something that I saw in my influencer marketing days. It's something that's absolutely still applicable now. And personal branding is a kind of modern translation of human-driven marketing. That's why it works. We're sort of sick of being advertised to as consumers. And the human-centered approach and the sort of people-first content that creates emotional connections, that's what we want to see. That's what we want to listen to. And hopefully, if you can see it that way, if you can reframe thinking about personal branding as a sort of unattainable thing and start thinking, well, it's something that I can sort of shape to help me as an individual in the way that I think suits me as an individual, and not necessarily being a vlogger or a TikToker. Hopefully, it'll help you realize that it is attainable. It is something that you can do. It's about finding the approach and the strategy that aligns to you. And we'll get into how you can do that in a bit. I just wanted to show you a little bit of a snapshot as to sort of, we're talking about people follow people and people buy from people. The biggest social media accounts in the world, they aren't brands, they're people. If you look at this list alone, this is a small snapshot of a few entrepreneurs and their businesses. But that emotional connection that people have with a founder, with a face, with a story, with challenges, with wins, that's why it works. And that's what you need to think about when you're trying to create content for yourself and put yourself out there. And I've put together a few examples of personal brands that I think are great, that I think are worth mentioning. And perhaps you've heard of them, perhaps you haven't. But let's get into them. This is the first one I've noted down. This is Ben Francis. He's the founder of a sportswear brand called Gymshark. It's from the UK. He founded the company in 2012, I believe, when he was 19. And he's now Britain's youngest billionaire. He's worth something like 1.3 billion pounds at age 32. And he's achieved an incredible amount. But for me, he's absolutely the poster boy when it comes to personal branding. He has documented his whole journey from the early days. If you go on his YouTube channel and go back to some of his first videos, you'll see sort of him in his garage and getting his first samples in, and he's opened up the sort of storytelling element to everyone, and in that way he's built a community. And this is what I think was really interesting about it, is by sharing his story and by building in public, by working loudly, building in public, he's created two things for himself. The first one is he's created a sort of feedback channel. So he can sort of put things out there like these are new designs, or what do you think of this direction that I'm going in with the brand? And he can get sort of direct feedback from an audience. And the other is that he's created a ready-made sales channel for himself by creating that sort of tight-knit community, not only around sports influencers, but also around consumers. So I think he's done it fantastic. He still does it fantastic. And he's also one of the first really young entrepreneurs, I think, to leverage LinkedIn years ago. So if you don't follow him, give him a follow. The next one is probably someone that more people know, is Stephen Bartlett. He is an entrepreneur. He's probably most well known for his podcast, Diary of a CEO. It's one of the biggest podcasts in the world. He speaks to the likes of, we think, Thierry Henry, experts, doctors, you name it. It's a great podcast. But what I think is really interesting about Stephen is he has absolutely clocked on to the fact that by building his brand, he's known as Stephen Bartlett. He's not known as the companies that he's built along the way. Because what you probably don't know is that he had a business before Diary of the CEO called Social Chain. He had an agency, which he ended up selling. He also had other ventures. Flight Story was another one. But what he's achieved for himself in building his personal brand and putting himself out there is incredible. And it's for his brand, not necessarily the other agencies. He's been on Forbes 30 under 30 list. He's now a dragon on Dragon's Den in the UK. He's the author of multiple books. So he is, and yes, he's not come, there's been a lot of backlash about him, specifically about numbers and what he has earned and what he hasn't. But hey, if you're in the public eye, then it's to be expected. But I think the value for me is that he understood that if I put myself out there and if I make a conscious effort to be out there and to be visible and to share my vision and my expertise and my journey, it'll bring me opportunities, which it did. And now you're probably thinking, but personal branding is only for people that have been on TV and for billionaires, but that's absolutely not the case. I thought I'd put this example in because this is someone that's relatively new to the space, but that has grown exponentially through her personal brand. This is Amy Smale, and she is the founder of fashion brand Odd Muse. I think she worked at ASOS before she started the company, and she actually sort of, I think it was during lockdown, she decided that she was going to start sort of designing, put all of her savings into the business. And she's gone out to the press and publicly said, if I hadn't focused on building my personal brand, the business probably wouldn't be where it is today. Her profile and her channels as a founder, and the fact that she's created content probably daily for the last few years, are a massive reason why the brand is so big today, and that the brand turned over something £5 million in 2023, and they're set to grow this year. Her content, I do have to say, is different than Stephen and Ben's. It's very, very raw, very authentic. She shares TikToks about, supply chain issues and meeting with buyers, meeting with suppliers, design challenges, designs that flopped. It's very much that sort of authentic, transparent storytelling, which is absolutely what everyone's connected with. She's very honest, and I think that's admirable for someone to put themselves out there. But look at what it's done for her. So what can we learn from all of these examples? I think the most important thing is that the rules have changed when it comes to marketing, building, putting yourself out there, building a professional profile. The old way of doing things, so if we're talking about marketing a business, the old way of going through third-party media, if you think about it, you're sort of, if you do an interview with third-party media channel, you're kind of aligning yourself with that channel, which perhaps doesn't have the same values that you do. Going through or relying only on third-party media is a way of the past. Going directly to your audience and having a personal brand and owning your narrative is super important today. And the thing is, if you don't take control of your narrative as a founder, as a professional, whatever you're doing, the world will fill it in for you. So it's super important that you own that narrative to reap the benefits. It can, having a personal brand, it can make or break your business. So why not sort of put the effort into making it work? A personal brand that's positioned well in an industry is something that can not only create awareness, build authority, build trust, it can also, create revenue. So all of these things have been very much focused on businesses, CEOs, entrepreneurs, and then you're probably asking yourself, how do I build my personal brand? Let's get into it. The first thing I want to say is that I think there's a lot of misconception around building a personal brand, that it's a sort of unattainable thing. Having a personal brand is talking about what you know. It's talking about what you know, it's talking about how you know it, and it's talking about why it's important in your industry, why it's important in your area of expertise. It's about, I think I mentioned it earlier, it's about working loudly. It's about being out there. It's about being visible. And people often overcomplicate that and think that they have to sort of be reinventing the wheel or, writing full on essays, etc. And that's just not the case. But what is really important is understanding what I mentioned, is that not everyone needs the sort of same formula when it comes to what's going to build their personal brand. Not everyone has the same ingredients, but determining the balance in that is what will help you build your personal brand. And this is what I call, in what I do for my clients, a personal brand strategy. This is basically how we approach working for a client when we're building a personal brand. This is the flow. This is the formula. We start by building a strategy. We start by creating a strategy. And that's what I'm going to try and help you. I'm going to try and give you a sort of framework so that you can do that too. The strategy defines who someone is, what drives them, what their content pillars are, and then we go and create content for them. Content creation, as we've seen in Amy's, in Ben's, in Stephen's, actually creating content is a very important part of building a personal brand. It's not the only part, but it is a very important part of creating visibility and getting your voice out there. Then we have continuity, which is incredibly important. All of those examples that I gave are people that, as I said, they posted every week without fail. That's how you stay top of mind for everyone. And then obviously they optimize as they go. It's never going to be 100% spot on in the beginning. if you're changing direction, if you're changing market, if you're changing, roles, maybe you're changing careers, you need to sort of grow and understand how that's going to reflect in what you're communicating. But let's look at defining a strategy. So if you were thinking about how can I create a personal brand strategy for myself, this is where we'd start. The first part of it is defining who you are as a person, as an individual. The second is defining where you'll communicate. And the third is what you'll communicate. So let's look at who you are. I know you're probably thinking, how on earth am I going to get who I am on paper? When we do this for clients, it's not a list of work experience. It's not like a CV. That is obviously an important part of understanding who someone is and what they've achieved, but it doesn't make the sort of core part of the strategy. This is actually a really great exercise to do, even if you're, even before you start an interview process. If you're thinking about starting a new career or not quite sure what you want to do, doing this exercise to get your strategy on paper, I think, is a much more valuable exercise than writing down a CV. I was talking to someone about it the other day. As someone that hires people quite a lot, I think that the CV, or the era of the CV, is kind of becoming a little bit it's the CV is not something I think we'll see sticking around for very long. It's basically asks you to sort of, within the constraints of a list of what you've done in your experience, ask you to present yourself. And it says nothing about who a person really is and what drives them and what they could bring to the table, which is why I think something like this is a great exercise for you to understand, okay, who am I? What do I want? And what can I bring to an organization? So the way that I usually do this for a strategy is in exactly the same way that I would do it for a brand. And that is to define your purpose, as in your purpose, your personal purpose, your vision, your mission, and your positioning. This is basically what you want to end up with in a document, this written out, all of these sections, in your tone of voice, in something that reflects you. It's really important, if you have this on paper, that it gives you a framework from which to work from, and it gives you sort of benchmark to go back to. If you've written a piece of content, or you're thinking about doing something, you're thinking, yeah, but does this align with me? Does this align with what I want to communicate? Does this align with what I want to achieve? Is this my unique point of view? So it is a great thing to sort of to check against. And if we go through this list quickly, purpose, I usually say, is something like, it's the middle point between what you're good at, what the world needs, and what'll make you money. So if you can try and think about that, that's where you want to be. And your vision and your mission and your positioning are really about sort of what you want to achieve, who are we speaking to, and also how you want to position yourself. Maybe think about people, peers, or people that you aspire to. Perhaps you follow people on LinkedIn that you really enjoy talking to, reading their content of, or connecting with. How do you differentiate yourself from them? What's different about the way that you create content? What's different about sort of the way that you've positioned yourself? I know you're probably all taking this in and thinking, yeah, okay, great. How am I going to get this on paper? The biggest part of having a personal brand is getting over the cringe hurdle. It's getting over that idea of, yeah, but does anyone really want to listen to what I have to say? Or I'm going to put myself out there. Like, are people listening? Is it the right thing to say? Anyone in any industry who's ever put themselves out there has had to get over this sort of initial cringe. Actually, it's probably not even an initial hurdle. It comes back every time you do something new. TikTokers had to post their first video. Everyone's had to write their first article or do their first presentation. Getting over that hurdle is a huge part in just I think you sort of break through a wall. Once you've done it once, once you've done it twice, 3 times, you stop worrying about it. And then you start seeing what it can actually do for you. And actually it's a big part of what I do for clients as well, is sort of coach them through this process. A lot of them have incredible ideas and are more than comfortable sitting in front of a room of 100 people and sharing their knowledge. But if they think about sort of getting it on paper or putting it on a platform, in front of loads of thousands of people, it's a different kind of challenge. So we definitely coach people through that. And for me, it's a really rewarding part of my job. I really love that part of what I do, sitting with someone and understanding what makes them tick and helping them get that idea on paper and then getting it out there and seeing that it actually, it sparks interest in people. is great. I love that. But if you wanted to start today, if you wanted to start writing a strategy today and thinking about who you are and getting it down on paper, I have a tip for you. This is something we also do with our clients. Rather than just being sat in front of a piece of paper and thinking, I have to get words down on paper about who I am, start by asking other people. No one knows you quite like the people around you. So a great exercise is to ask 6 people in your network these 3 questions. Make sure that it's a mix of people. So for example, make sure that you ask an ex-colleague or a current colleague, perhaps a partner, family member, friends. Make sure it's a good mix between professional and personal. Ask them these questions and ask them to send you the written answers back, because it's really important that you have them on paper, that you can go through them. And the next step is to find the red thread in the answers. They will guarantee there'll be overlap in the answers that you get. And then you can use that as input for this slide that I showed here. So you could, for example, perhaps there are specific adjectives that come back that you can maybe use to shape your purpose. Or perhaps there are specific nuggets of information about your expertise that you can use to shape your positioning. Use the people around you to shape the you part of your personal brand strategy. It's a great place to start. And it's also a much easier way to sort of start thinking about, it's like someone holding up a mirror to you, start thinking about who I am and who I want to be. Once you've got that section on paper, then you need to start thinking about where you're going to communicate. So that by that, I mean the sort of ecosystem of channels that I talked about. So what is important for you and your goals, and then what you'll communicate. By what, I mean in terms of what kind of content, what will your content pillars be? So these 2 sections I usually call your content strategy. And this is sort of an overview of, let's say, the ingredients for a personal brand. If I'm looking at working with a client, this is sort of the full spectrum of the personal brand ecosystem. And as I mentioned, the mix doesn't need to be the same for everyone. You could be someone that is looking for a new position, and perhaps LinkedIn is only important for you. Or you could be someone that works in social media, and a combination of LinkedIn, X, Instagram, being in the press. Writing thought leadership is super important. Specific awards, conferences, being a juror for awards. Also a really interesting part of, and I think that's something that a lot of people overlook, is number 4 in this column. And that is a lot of entrepreneurs, they love to speak. They love to speak on stage. They sort of market themselves as keynote speakers. And a lot of them have personal websites they have nothing to do with their business, but they're only for themselves. So let's say a sort of personal brand website. And that's something that we help people build, because it for one, it could act as a bio or a speaker bio or a sort of speaker show reel. For someone else, it could be that they're perhaps, publishing a book, publishing an ebook, sharing more sort of owned products. And people sort of overlook that when they're thinking about, I'm a founder, I have a business. But you really have to think about the sort of, as I mentioned, the ecosystem around your personal brand and what's important to make that, sorry, there's a banging on the window, to make that sort of the right mix. One platform that I think is the most important platform there is for probably everyone in this call is LinkedIn. And it's the platform that my parents, for me anyway, it was the platform that my dad told me I needed to use when I was, starting the job hunt or just finished UCL. It was the platform that I had to fill in. But the way that we used it was more of a sort of online resume. It was a CV. But it's completely transformed today. It's completely transformed as an online resume platform. It's become a thought leadership platform. So if there's one thing I want you to take away from this session, it's to stop thinking of LinkedIn as your online CV. Stop thinking about the way that stop thinking about the way that it was, that it used to be, and start thinking about it as, sorry, that there's a seagull outside that is banging on the window. So we have to get rid of it. The way that I always thought about LinkedIn was that I had to fill it in. And then it would stay there. It would stay that way. Start thinking about LinkedIn as the landing page for your personal brand. And I'll jump into what I mean by that in a second. It should be a living, breathing thing. It should be a living, breathing document. It should reflect changes, but it also needs to be set up in that way. So let me jump into a few tips that I have to set up your LinkedIn profile, to use it to your advantage, and to start thinking about it as a landing page. So the first thing is, and it sounds really easy, really simple, is making sure that your profile is filled completely up to completion. And I know that sounds stupid, but basically LinkedIn works as it has a point system. And the more points you have, the more it sort of pushes you into the LinkedIn ecosystem. So if you look on your profile, make sure that everything, or as much as possible, is filled in, from your about section down to your work experience, and make sure it's spot on and reflects the situation that you're in now. The second is, I did mention that you want to look at your LinkedIn as your landing page keywords. By that, I mean, if you think about it, your LinkedIn page is a landing page. If someone's going to look you up, they're going to arrive there and they want to know more about you and your expertise and what you do. Think about your LinkedIn profile as a landing page that needs keywords to optimize it. So think about the keywords that reflect your expertise, or perhaps where you want to go in your career. For me, that would be, for example, that would be personal branding, founder strategies, etc. And make sure those keywords are in your headline, that they're in your about section, that you're in your work experience, and eventually in the content that you share. The next one is consistency. I always recommend that you post a minimum of 2 times a week. That might sound a lot for someone who perhaps doesn't share content on LinkedIn at all. But it's super important that basically you tell the algorithm that, hey, I'm here and I'm using the platform, I'm around, I'm engaging with people, not that you sort of, post something every 3 weeks. So consistency is key. The best times to post are usually between 9:30 in the morning. And I usually say sort of like Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays are great days to post. And the last one is appease the algorithm. The algorithm can be a stubborn one. I have some tips later on as to what to remember. But for example, some small tips that I see people do all the time. One thing is not putting a link in the body of a post. What happens is you're basically sending people outside of LinkedIn, and LinkedIn doesn't like that. So it completely kills the reach of a post. So make sure if you're posting a link, you put it in a comment underneath the post itself, and then send people to the comment. Another one is not tagging too many people. LinkedIn also sees that as spam. Not posting more than once a day. LinkedIn again sees that as spam, and you'll probably see that one post has way more reach than the other one that you've shared. Again, it will sort of kill the reach of the second post. So all of these tips are things that can help you sort of appease the algorithm and keep it happy. I've put an example in here of a few things that I think are also important to mention. In your LinkedIn profile, you've got a banner. Very important that the banners reflect you, what you're doing. For some people, they put a headline in there. For some people, they put a logo. Then we have the headline, which is underneath the name, underneath Justin. A headline is super important. So don't be afraid to make it detailed. It's the first thing that people see, especially when they're sort of in LinkedIn search. Don't be afraid to make it fun. Don't be afraid to make it sort of reflect your personality. It should be as detailed as possible. And again, if you can, use a keyword in there, great. Another tip is you can actually put keywords in the file name of your banner and your profile picture. If you think about it, people can also search your name or company or role or position in Google search and Google image search, and your photo can come up if you have used the keywords in the file name. And another one that a lot of people forget is you can actually put a link at the bottom. So where it says visit my website at the bottom of here, you can also add a link in a different way. You can create a sort of custom button on the link. If you want to send people to a profile or a company page, use the full breadth of what you would do if you turned your LinkedIn page into a landing page. Try and think about it that way. So let's say you've sorted your LinkedIn profile, it's all up and ready to go. And now you're thinking, what on earth am I going to share on LinkedIn for my personal brand? What I try and tell people is LinkedIn used to be a sort of online CV, online resume platform. And it then sort of became a broadcast channel for, look at what I've achieved, or I've got a new position, or I've had a promotion. Try to forget that that's happening and try and think about what LinkedIn's being used for now, which is that it's a thought leadership platform. People are sharing personal experiences, personal insights, and linking that to their expertise, or linking that to a specific industry. So here are some examples of how you can sort of change that mindset. So for example, not thinking about I've just launched a new product, or I'm looking for a new job, and try and think about it as, what have I learned that will help me sort of be an expert in this industry, or I feel this way about something that's happened in an industry. To help you a little bit, I've put together some sort of prompts that you could use for a month in content. These are some really easy, quick ways to think about what I can share on LinkedIn, and how you can change that mindset from, does anyone want to actually hear what I have to say? And isn't LinkedIn just a platform for sharing sort of achievements? Try and think about what you as an individual like to consume. And also, one of the biggest tips I can give is start reading LinkedIn, and start liking content that you enjoy, start saving it. One of the ways that I do that is I use Notion as a platform, and they have a content calendar template within Notion, and which has been an absolute game changer for me. You can I throw all of my ideas in there in a calendar template, and there are tags with, you can tag each idea from idea to draft, scheduled, post, and I put loads of links in there. I copy and paste sort of photos. It helps me anyway, having a sort of visual aid as well as to my ideas and things that I've seen throughout the week, and then I turn those into posts as I go. But that's what's helped me. And then the other tip I would give is, once you've written something, go back to that slide that sort of strategy slide with your vision, your purpose, your mission, and think to yourself, does this reflect my opinion? One of the biggest, I think, not necessarily an issue, but a challenge for people is not falling into the pattern of wanting to share something that has no personal sort of add-on. Try and add that give that personal opinion, give your maybe even challenge what you're talking about. If it's an industry development or something that someone said in the press, start the discussion and give people the idea that, this is what I have to say, and these are my views, not necessarily that you're an RSS feed of information that you've found on the internet, which is, it does take you have to think about the cringe mountain and getting over it, and the leaving that behind you. But remember that you're losing by not posting. That's the only thing that I can say is you're creating visibility by posting. One post is better than no posts at all. Those 10 likes that you get, those could be 10 potential clients, or that could be 10 people that unlock opportunities for you that you probably haven't even thought of. There's a lot of people, I think, that they already have a network on LinkedIn that's filled with untapped potential. It's just about creating that visibility, because again, having a personal brand or building your LinkedIn is not only a great way to sort of claim your expertise while you have a specific position, but let's say in the future you do want to make a career switch, or you do want to go into a different industry, that you have that sort of network of warm leads from your LinkedIn that can sort of help you along the way, in the same way that Ben Francis created a sort of ready-made sales channel, or that Stephen created a sort of probably a sort of network of people that were interested in buying a lot of his businesses. It's super important to think about a personal brand not just being a nice to have, but it being a super important, a super valuable business tool. The algorithm, to leave you with this. One of the most important things about the algorithm is being visible. And something that I do before I post, I make sure that, I call it the EPE rule, engage, post, engage. I make sure that 15 minutes before I post something on LinkedIn, I go and I engage with 5 accounts. I post, and then 15 minutes later, I do the same. Super easy and actually really easy to keep up with. Basically, that'll encourage you to start engaging with people's content on LinkedIn. Get commenting. A comment is sort of more points than just a like. And you will see, I promise you will see results. You will see your impressions going up if you stick to that. So just to recap, how to build your personal brand. Start with a strategy, get yourself on paper, start creating content, start being visible, get yourself out there, learn from your mistakes. If it's not working, optimize, try, fail, try again, and keep it continuous, because Again, personal brand is not nice to have. It can seriously change things for you. If you, it's a strategic necessity for brand building and putting yourself out there and building a personal profile today. So that was it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Georgina. That was I'm so impressed how much information you managed to pack into under 40 minutes from, kind of strategic ideas and those kind of key takeaways. You've given people some things that they can actually go away and use from starting from today, which is amazing. So thank you just again so much for your time. We've got 20 minutes, which feels very luxurious amount of time for questions.
Sorry to interrupt you. I need to just quickly grab my charger because I see that it's sucked all of my battery out.
No problem.
Where is it? Oh, it's downstairs. Let me just quickly.
No problem at all.
All right.
It's just a good opportunity to remind anyone out there. We've got a few questions in the Q&A, which we'll get onto now. But if there's anyone else who wants to get, this is your chance to ask Georgina something. So we've got from Sonia, we've got a couple of questions. First one, it seems that promoting yourself has become more difficult due to social media algorithms.
Yeah.
How can you successfully promote our personal brand and reach audiences despite the algorithms?
I think the biggest tip I can give is try and learn from the algorithm. It's something that I've made part of my process as well. Is for example, posting times, the types of topics you're sharing, understanding which formats work and which don't. Here, Mike, can I have the? Thank you. I often try and look, the algorithms, they're always going to change. We can't control them. So it's super important to let that one go. LinkedIn, I do two things. I follow a guy, you should follow him if you don't follow him, and his name is Richard van der Blom on LinkedIn. And he basically studies the algorithm on a weekly basis and says, okay, for example, carousels are performing better than static images, or emojis are performing less, if you use an emoji in copy, are performing less well than other posts. So I learned from that. And then I also look at how my content is performing. For example, nearly always you'll see that images of a person work better than any other images. So if I was to post a picture of myself versus a picture of my laptop, the picture of me is always going to work better. Why? It's usually recognition. People see a face. It's sort of that personal connection again. But understanding, okay, the pictures of an individual work better, and planning accordingly that way. That's how you sort of create that continuity. There are some people that only post selfies and only post images of themselves nowadays, which I think, okay, it goes a little bit far if you're talking about a topic that has nothing to do with you. I would always say try and make it relevant to the topic that you're talking about. So to recap, I would say research a little bit about the algorithm, follow some people that talk about its changes, or try and stay up with how it's changing. And the second would be have a look at what works for you and what doesn't. I find that, for example, carousels, they work really well for some of my clients, but they don't work well for others. And it depends on the industry, depends on the audience, the type of content they're creating. So yeah, the algorithms, we can't do anything about them. Yeah, those are the two tips I can give for that. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, and I think that's a great answer. So basically, yeah, you've there's someone who it will, you can go to follow Richard van der Blom, you said.
Yeah.
Brilliant. And you can kind of keep up to date on that.
That's for LinkedIn, by the way, not for TikTok or for Instagram. But if you're thinking about LinkedIn, he's a great follow.
Thank you. Let's have another. We've got lots of questions have come in, so I'm just going to try and, if people would like to upvote as well, the ones that they would most like to hear, that'd be really helpful, because we probably won't have time for everything.
I'll try and give short answers, I promise.
Yeah. So we've got, Diho has asked about your content creation strategy on LinkedIn. How could we stand out in the first few seconds, e.g. with visual elements?
Absolutely, visual elements are key. The people that there's a lot of, let's call them LinkedIn influencers or people on LinkedIn that only post text only posts, but they have over time, they've built that audience up. I find that now, if you're just starting out, the most, the easiest way to win is to share a visual. It could be a photo of yourself, as I said. It could be a photo of something that you're talking about. It could be, if it's a team photo, if it's a picture of the office, graduation photo, whatever. Always include a visual. Absolutely.
Wow, thank you. So we've got another question from an anonymous poster. Hi, I have a question in terms of engaging with potential warm leads. If you've DM'd them on LinkedIn about a job and they were open to questions about their company, what sort of questions should I ask them that could be good for building a relationship?
Oh, that's a good one. I would think if someone was messaging me, I would love to know, or I would like to hear from someone, if they would ask me, what are you looking for in someone? What kind of person are you looking for? And how can I show you a little bit more of who I am? Because as I said, sort of the CV, I'm not a huge fan of the CV. I feel like it's sort of, it doesn't say a lot about someone's drive or values. Maybe ask them what is it that you would like to see that can give you a better idea of who I am. Or ask them if it'd be open for a chat. Would you be available for a 10-minute call? I'd love to tell you a bit more about myself. I don't feel like I can tell you in this sort of small message box enough about who I am. But I think it's great already that someone's using LinkedIn for that reason, because I think a lot of people are afraid to send messages. In nearly everyone I've spoken to, sort of on the recruitment side, and even sort of investors, they say, send us messages. Talk to us. We're sat on the other side of the computer waiting for people to put themselves out there and to be visible. So tell us a little bit more about who you are.
It sounds like it's a guaranteed way to stand out from the mass, I guess, isn't it? So we've got Trista, who's asked, this is a really great question. If I'm starting a new career direction and still navigating my path, how would you approach and start building the personal brand if I don't have a lot of professional ideas to offer?
Perhaps share that process. Perhaps share what it is like to change career paths, and perhaps the things you're running into. It doesn't always have to be, I think I mentioned it in the presentation, you don't always have to see LinkedIn as I have to post something in which I state something, or I share a new idea or something that's completely, it has to be sort of top level, high level. It can also be a discussion. You can also ask your network, but also outside of your network. I think these are really interesting industry developments. Does anyone have any podcasts on the topic that you can share with me? Take the audience along with you on the journey, and also sharing challenges and vulnerabilities is something that people really appreciate on the platform.
Thank you so much. I've got so Flora is asking, do you have any tips for getting over the cringe mountain? Great question.
Just do it. Just post it. Honestly, I've experienced the same thing. Actually, the thing that changed for me was when I had friends around me who've been doing it. They're TikTokers, or they've been, they speak on stage all the time. They said to me, if you don't do it, it'll never get any easier. So just writing stuff down. Actually, that was step one for me, is actually just start writing. And don't write in the LinkedIn box, as in LinkedIn and in the text box. Write somewhere else. Write in a notebook. Write in your notes app. Don't feel the pressure of having to write it within LinkedIn, and just start writing. And then pressing post. That's the second step. But I promise you, it gets easier once you see what kind of response you get.
Absolutely, I love that. Being able to post separately somewhere, rather than putting pressure on you to get it word for word perfect in the moment. That's a great tip. I've got another, there's so many great questions. But this one's from Nancy Best. Hi, Georgina. Nancy Best here, founder of Ladies Who Crunch. We were at UCL together.
Hey.
Great to see you present your expertise. Love your work. What's your view on video content on LinkedIn? Do's and don'ts?
Great question, because this is something that we talk about all the time here. So LinkedIn's not optimized for video. It's not a video platform. It never has been. LinkedIn, I don't think video works that well if I'm sort of on desktop or on mobile. Basically, if you're sort of scrolling and you come across a video, to hear the sound, you either have to sort of press on the speaker button, or you have to click in the video. And what happens is it takes you out of the feed. Not like in TikTok where you sort of you're scrolling, you can watch a video and you're still in feed. There are rumors that this is changing and will change very quickly within LinkedIn, that LinkedIn are testing a TikTok-like feed. I think that will completely change the algorithm in terms of how important video content is going to be for the platform. So I would say absolutely keep posting video now. The platform's not optimized for it yet, but it will be very, very soon. And I think they're going to make video even more important than text-only posts, etc. Carousels we've already seen are less, they used to be sort of the highest scoring posts. They're even less so now. I think they're warming up to get video up the top. That's a great question. It's something that's very, very much top of mind at the moment.
Thank you. From another anonymous poster, coming from an undergrad in English as well, how did you acquire business/marketing knowledge? How did you present yourself to employers when lacking that knowledge?
I did a lot of work experience. Even before I went to UCL, I shadowed a lot of people, did a lot of unpaid internships. And yeah, for me, I didn't do a master's. I just went straight into working. And that was the only way for me. And I think if I think about it, I was never open about the fact that I didn't know something, but I was very open about the fact that I wanted to learn in specific areas. So I made it really, really clear to my employer, I want I love this opportunity. I'm going to give it my all. I would benefit from learning a bit more in this area. And nearly, I think 9 times out of 10, they all said to me, great, here's a self-development budget. Go for it. Take the course. Sit next to this person at their desk. Go out and go to conferences, go and learn. So I think transparency and openness are key, but everyone can do it. You don't need a degree in business. Absolutely none.
Right. So that's another anonymous person. Great session. Is social media, LinkedIn in this case, the only way to build a personal brand?
No, absolutely not. I think what I was trying to get at with the ecosystem is it's obviously really nice to have a balance. And the great thing about LinkedIn, which I think so many people don't realize, is it's organic. There's so much organic potential and organic reach in LinkedIn that you can't get elsewhere. So that's why I mentioned, that's why I focused on LinkedIn and why I think everyone should leverage it. But absolutely, there are other ways to build a personal brand. For example, if you're an author, if you write thought leadership, speaking is a massive way to build a personal brand. Starting with smaller sessions. You can do it within businesses or internally in places. I wouldn't say that social media is something that you should overlook altogether, but I think finding the right platform that suits you and what you want to achieve is key. But don't overlook LinkedIn. Too many people overlook LinkedIn.
Absolutely. So is there something you take into account when thinking of combining YouTube with LinkedIn for the personal brand? That's from Eva.
That's a really good question too. There are a lot of platforms where I would say create content for the platform. As in TikTok, it's really important that you create content native to the platform. YouTube is obviously long form content. What is great about LinkedIn, I think this sort of ties with Nancy's question, it doesn't necessarily have a platform culture in terms of video. So you can, for example, you could use a video that let's say there's a full talk of yours on YouTube. You can create snippets of that talk and maybe create some edits of a specific section in which you talk about one topic, or you talk about sort of a really small part of a bigger section of your talk, and repurpose that content from YouTube on LinkedIn. What I wouldn't do is share YouTube links on LinkedIn. Create snippets from YouTube and put them on LinkedIn natively, because as I said, if you're sending people outside of LinkedIn doesn't like that. So if you want to send people to a specific, to say like, here's the full recording, put it in a comment, but focus on creating content within LinkedIn. and find out what works. I think maybe this is only me, but I feel like a lot of the video content on LinkedIn, it's either people in a podcast setting or sort of them on stage or sort of sat in front of the camera like this. I think there's so much opportunity to create sort of different formats on LinkedIn that people aren't sort of, they haven't tested yet, or they're nervous about doing it. I'd love to see like a whole different format on LinkedIn. Like, why not? Why isn't there another way for people to present their ideas rather than being sat behind a microphone? So that's something that I'm also thinking about with clients, is how can we create something that's you know, different, that challenges the status quo and the way that everyone's doing it. But good question, very good question.
Thank you. And there's also been a couple of other questions around, so hopefully we can cover a few people in one. But from apologies if I've pronounced your name wrong, but from someone called Calliope, another question would be is if they could hire your services. So if someone is interested, Georgina, to find out more about becoming potentially a client of yours, how should they go about that? And if they want to find out more information, along those lines.
Great question. Absolutely. I'd love to chat further. My email's on this slide. I don't know if everyone can see it. My email address is georgina@personally.team. And the Personally website is personally.team. And you can also send me an email through the contact form, or you can find me on LinkedIn through my full name, which is on this slide as well. So please reach out.
Fabulous, thank you. And then we had another, Mrs. C. Goulding, please, really great, Georgina. Can you recommend a personal brand guru? So what do we need to ask to get the best out of them?
You mean as an individual or a?
I mean, I that's how it's set. Yeah, I guess. Well, maybe cover both, just in case it means one or the other.
How would you know how to get the most out of someone? If you, let's say you wanted to work with someone on building that personal brand, on building your personal brand, I'd say the most important thing is making sure. So let's say you want to work with someone, you're not quite sure whether they understand you or they understand your business. Ask them to do a case. Say to them, we've just had a session, we've had a meeting. Can you write down in one page or in a few ideas what your impression of me is? I think a lot of people forget that ghostwriting is very different than copywriting. It's not just writing for someone. You have to completely sort of step into someone's shoes, understand the way their brain works, reflect their tone of voice. It's almost more of like a journalistic approach than it is a copywriting approach. So I think that's, if you're going to work with someone in personal branding, that's a great way to understand whether someone really understands you. So you can give them a task of doing that. And in terms of personal brand gurus, I wouldn't know off the top of my head. But that's something I can think about and add later.
Thank you. Still got loads of questions, and I've realised we're running out of time, so we're just going to try and whiz through maybe a couple more if we can. So we have someone, hi Georgina, excellent slides and presentation. 2 questions. They want to become a freelancer. How do they get their first client when they don't have experience yet? Second question, when to start to build their personal brand? Is it okay to focus on one platform and some platforms, and keeping, so for example, LinkedIn, YouTube, and TikTok active, while as others are private, such as Instagram?
Yeah, great questions. First answer to the first question, I got my first client through LinkedIn. So I did one post saying I'm going freelance, and out of that, I never had to do any sort of inbound. I never posted again on LinkedIn. I had so much work from that one post, and maybe I was lucky or maybe I wasn't, but I think, and it's sort of, what it does is it creates a sort of chain effect that people hear about it, and then they see it in their feed, and then they see someone that they know that has also liked that post. And then my business partner I met on LinkedIn, because he saw that someone else had liked that post, that one post that I said when I started freelancing. So a lot of my business connections have come out of LinkedIn. And it was as simple as posting. You can probably find it if you go back through my feed. I'm going freelance. These are my services. Let me know if you're interested. I did have a website for myself. So I made sure that my LinkedIn page, as I said, was sort of landing page worthy, and that it reflected my website. My website was super simple. It was a list of marketing strategy, copy. These are the services that I offer. But again, putting myself out there on LinkedIn was an absolute game changer. And what was the second question?
The second question was about whether it's okay to keep certain platforms private and some active.
Yeah, I would never say, and I think I say it more often to clients than not, I would never say to someone, you need to start a new channel from scratch. I would always say, leverage the channel that has the most potential for you. Focus on that, building that, and the rest you can sort of, create as you go or build as you go. If you already have 500, 600 connections in LinkedIn, start there. Absolutely. Don't try and sort of splinter your efforts in trying to understand a whole new platform culture and putting loads of time into creating YouTube content when you can start on LinkedIn, create a bit more traction, and then also use what you found on LinkedIn to inform what you're going to create on YouTube. What are the topics that people are talking about? What are the things that no one's talking about? What do people want to know? And then those two channels can work hand in hand. And that's how we try and build a strategy, is not necessarily just looking at, we've got to be everywhere, but is how can we use each channel strategically, or maybe one channel for a specific person and a specific goal.
Thank you so much. And I think, just in the interest of time, we'll make this the last question from Aretha. It's a really great one to finish on. How would you recommend navigating building a personal brand or presence online while also working for a larger corporate organization? So assuming there are limitations on how you can present yourself, but you still want to be authentic.
Well, I think a great place to start is to start that conversation with your employer. There are a lot of rules and regulations that I probably don't know about in your situation, but it's nearly always that they're open to understand and to hear that you want to communicate about the business and about your expertise. And what I would say is, suggest to them, this is what I would like to talk about. These are the topics. These are my content pillars. I'd love to help promote the business by sharing my own expertise, and see what they say. Start the conversation, I think, is a great place to work. And a lot of corporate businesses, they do have sort of like C-level personal brand strategies in place, but they find it difficult to let that trickle down into the layers below that. But if it works the other way around, how great would that be? If you came with, this is how I see it, and I think that I could share this expertise, and my colleague who does this could share this, and the person who's head of this department, and together we would cover all of these bases, I think they'd be more than happy to hear your input on that. Absolutely.
Thank you so much. Could I ask if you would be able to stop sharing your screen, and we can just bring up a final slide for everyone else. Hopefully my colleague is able to share. There we go. Thank you so much, Sasha. We'll just move to the QR code at the end. Thank you so much. So I just wanted to say, I mean, the time, I felt like it absolutely flew by. You've covered so much information, and I do apologize to the people who had questions we weren't able to get to. But I think that's a record. I think you covered more than 15 questions in that time, which is incredible. So just a little a reminder to our audience, if you haven't done so already, so apologies. If you would like to, we would love to hear your feedback for this session. So you can see on the screen, there is a QR code, and that will take you to, it's a very short form, I promise, but it will really help us to shape future sessions and improve what we offer going forward. Thank you. I want to say thank you to everyone who's taken the time to be here today. Thank you so much to Georgina for building such an informative talk. And I really hope to see you at the next event. On the 2nd of July, we have an event that's around nutrition productivity, which will be another really insightful opportunity to get some key tips from experts. And you can find out about that on the UCL website. But for now, other than that, I just wanted to say a huge thank you to everybody once again for joining. And we look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Georgina. Thank you.
Bye.